Hey y'all, it's me again, Ivona Emil Elizondo. And today I want to take some time to introduce or maybe remind you of a few astrological concepts that help us astrologers work and utilize the planets in astrology. So I'm going to introduce or discuss basically the Thema Mundi. I'm going to explain how the planets are placed within that construct, the Thema Mundi construct. And then I'm going to just highlight the specific zodiac signs that each of the planets are considered to be at home, okay, the rulership of the planets. But I first want to start off by saying that the astrology that I practice is traditional ancient astrology. It's one of the types, and so that's what I'm going to focus on. That's predominantly what this video is going to be about. Now, if we start to really tap into the concept of the Thema Mundi, which translates into the theme of the world, this is an understanding in astrology of a kind of mystical, mythological, ancient story of sorts or philosophical perspective of how the planets were actually placed at the time that our prospective solar system was born, essentially. So it's kind of like at the time that the universe was born and the solar system was born, it's a poof, here we go, here's the planets where they were, this is how they were birthed into the construct of astrology. All right, so now let's take a look at what the Thema Mundi actually looks like from a conceptualized perspective. So let me share my screen with you. And this is, yep, there you go. Okay, this is the Zodiac wheel. Most of you might recognize it. The only difference is, or one of the differences is that we usually start with the sign of Aries, okay? But not in the Thema Mundi. We don't start with Aries. Aries, as far as astrology is concerned, is the first sign that we tap into the Zodiac calendar, so to speak. And Aries was considered the first sign, or is considered the first sign in astrology, because it's when the sun moves into the spring equinox, right? Moves into Aries, which is happening today. Yay, I did a little video on that earlier, right? So today the sun ingresses into Aries, thus we consider it the beginning of the astrological year, because Aries is about birthing and spring and all these wonderful, life comes back after, that harsh winter. Okay, enough of that. Now, let's take a look at what the Thema Mundi actually represents. So according to the Thema Mundi, now that we just had, according to the Thema Mundi, the moon is what actually gave birth to the rest of the zodiac, the rest of the planets, basically the planets, okay? Because the moon represents birthing, it represents nurturing, it represents growth, okay? It represents the womb, it represents the breasts, and it represents all of that we need, the food that we need in order to birth and to nurture and to grow. All right, so here we go. So now let's get into the Thema Mundi again, and I'll show you the placements of each of the planets. Okay, so if we are tapping into the Thema Mundi, the world theme, right, that the moon in Cancer is the time when things are born or brought into life, they're nurtured, they're fed, and they start to blossom, then what happens next? Well, when things are born, they go out into the world, right? So the sun in Leo represents going out into the world and shining your light out into the world. And that's why Leos are like, me, look at me, focus on me, okay? These two are considered the luminaries in astrology, right? So the luminaries in astrology are those things that work with light. Well, the sun shines light, okay? And it sends the light out. And so what does the moon do? It reflects the light of the sun. So there's this constant interplay between the moon and the sun sending out light and the moon reflecting the light. So far, so good? So these were the first two planets, with the moon first and then sending it out to the sun. Now we want to tap into where the rest of the personal planets, which are Mercury, let me start over. The personal planets are the sun and moon, the two luminaries, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Yes, we have three other planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but those are not necessarily personal planets. And if you want to divide things up even more, the personal planets are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. And then the interpersonal, okay, or modifiers, so to speak, are Jupiter and Saturn. And then the intra, dealing with other people, generations, communities, are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. That's a different video. Okay, so now if we go back to the Thema Mundi, okay, let me share my screen again. So we have this idea that if we start, everything started with the moon in Cancer, okay, and the sun in Leo. This is because this is the hottest and warmest, okay, time of the year. Well, that's when you're going to see life. Look at the summer. You're outside, you're enjoying, you're not inside like you are in the cold during winter. Man, this is over here, and we're going to talk about these two in a little bit. All right, but essentially that's what the Thema Mundi says, is that this is a time when you are alive, you give birth, and you go out. Well, not necessarily you give birth. Well, you could give birth, but you know what I mean. The planets were given birth, okay? All right, so if we have the two luminaries, right, the moon and the sun, then a zodiac next to, with the zodiac next to each of these, corresponds to the planet that revolves most closely around these two luminaries. This is Mercury, okay? All right, and Mercury in Gemini, because Mercury never goes beyond one zodiac sign from the sun, okay? Same thing here. So now you find Mercury in Virgo. See how we're spreading out? So if we have Cancer, and then we have Leo, the sign before Cancer is Gemini, the sign after Leo is Virgo. And they're both ruled by Mercury, okay? And rulership means they feel comfortable at home. They own that sign. All right, so then what planet is next extending from the sun? Venus, you got it. So Venus then belongs to Taurus because it's one sign outside or next to Gemini. And then we have Venus in Libra, okay? Because Libra is never further than 2 signs away from the sun. Ah, are we noticing a pattern here? All right, the next sign, okay, after, or the next planet after Venus is Mars. So then Mars rules or owns Aries, and Mars rules Scorpio, according to traditional astrology. Modern astrology says not so much. Okay, maybe it's a co-ruler with what's the other one? Geez, I can't think. But Pluto. Sorry. See, I don't even practice modern astrology with Pluto. But from my perspective, this is why the Thema Mundi works so well, because everything is balanced out. All right. So then the next planet out would be Jupiter. And so Jupiter is then ruled by Pisces, and Jupiter is then ruled by Saturn. Again, one side out, one side away from each other. And then finally, the last personal planet is Saturn. And so thus Aquarius rules, Saturn rules Aquarius, and Saturn rules Capricorn. All right, so what do you think? Isn't that so cool? Okay, this is why for me, ancient astrology has a balanced perspective, and that's what we were talking about earlier as far as the spring equinox or the equinoxes. It's about finding balance between light and dark. Now, let me show you that chart again, because this is where you might see something that's a little fascinating, or it was to me. Okay, in ancient astrology or traditional astrology, again, the planets flare out from the moon, oopsie, there we go, and they flare out from the sun, which kind of makes sense to me, okay? So there's two planets, okay? There's a planet for each of the signs, okay? But there's the two luminaries, okay? And then we jump into Mercury again, okay, rules on each of those sides, and then and so forth and so on as we did. But essentially we see that there's a balance of light here, and then there's a balance of shadow here. Yes, the moon represents the shadow because it's at nighttime. That's when it's enhanced. The moon, we see the moon mostly during during nighttime. Okay, so you have a balanced perspective in the chart. Now, isn't that cool? Okay, if you don't find it as cool as I do, that's okay. Astrology is my language, but I hope this was informative in some way. If you want to learn more about the astrology, learn more about how the planets work, learn more about how the zodiacs work, okay, please reach out to me. You can find me at spiritualessence.com. That's spiritual-essence.com. And I will follow this video up with videos about, what rulership, okay, Mercury owns, the Gemini and Virgo, and I'm going to explain what all that is and what the moon, rules Cancer and what that means. So, be watching out for that video too. Okay. All right, everyone. You can find me at spiritualessence.com or at witchy gypsies on Facebook or on Instagram. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Blessed be.